Welcome to chapters 8 and 9 on finding your partners for indirect and direct exporting. Chapter 8 discusses indirect exporting, and specifically there's some comparison over whether to use an export management company versus a piggyback arrangement. A piggyback arrangement, as you might recall, is finding somebody who is already selling into the market that interests you and essentially piggybacking onto their distribution channel. An export management company, on the other hand, may handle several different lines, and that's all they do. They don't have their own company. They're not a manufacturer, in other words. So there are some considerations in terms of what might make sense. First is future use of the distribution channel. If you are doing a piggyback arrangement and you terminate that arrangement, you probably won't have access to that distribution channel later because you won't know who the end clients, the end users actually are. In an EMC arrangement, it may be possible to continue the relationship with the distribution channel. Another consideration, of course, is brand awareness. With a piggyback arrangement, that company has their own brand that they're trying to promote. Yours is just kind of an add-on, a way to supplement their line. So their focus is not really on building your brand. That's in contrast to an EMC where there will be more focus on building the brand. A couple of other issues are in terms of customer service, training, and warranty issues. With these areas, usually you would get more support with an EMC. And then last but not least is industry and technical knowledge requirements. So it depends what you're trying to accomplish. If you're eventually hoping to enter the market more forcefully and perhaps on your own, then an EMC may be the way to go. However, there may be markets in which a piggyback is your only option. And it may make sense if you have a good product that complements your piggyback partner's product. Okay, there are several ways of finding an indirect distributor, and I've listed some of them. You can see that there's a fair amount of overlap between the two. Networking events, trade shows, the internet, industry associations are a good source, etc. If you decide to do a more direct method, you use a more direct relationship, you may consider whether or not to appoint an agent or use a distributor. And it's critical to make a distinction between an agent versus a distributor. An agent does not take title to the goods, whereas a distributor does take title to the goods. An agent identifies potential customers, they help with the marketing, they facilitate the contract between the supplier and the ultimate customer. The supplier, however, which is you, retains the risk of physical loss until the goods are delivered to the customer, and they also retain the risk of non-payment. A distributor, on the other hand, as you said, they do take title to the goods, meaning that they are reselling in a defined geographic area. Now, there are a couple of caveats. A person who's treated as a distributor under foreign law may still be considered an agent under the FCPA, or Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. What this means is if that person breaks US law, specifically if they break the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, your company could still be liable. A couple of other legal considerations to think about is in terms of the contract, generally you would have the contract in two languages. You'd have it in English and then in the country in which you're working. It's important to specify that in the event of a conflict, which of the two languages would govern. Last but not least, both an agent and distributor are normally an independent contractor. However, if the supplier retains too much authority over their intermediary's performance, then that person, whether they are supposed to be an agent or distributor, might actually be considered an employee of the company. This is problematic for a couple of reasons. It may lead to unexpected difficulties with benefits. Now, case in point, if you have an agent or distributor in Mexico and they're considered an agent or distributor, you don't have to pay the mandatory aguinaldo, which is the Christmas bonus. On the other hand, if they are an employee, you are legally obligated to give them a Christmas bonus. So there are some distinctions. Um, Another potential difficulty is, of course, tax consequences. And then last but not least, which is really a big one, is if you had meant to set up an agent or distributor and they end up being considered your employee, you may have difficulty terminating them and you may have to pay them a severance. Case in point, a gentleman who went to one of my alma maters, who went to Thunderbird, American Graduate School of International Management, appointed a distributor in Europe, and come to find out that not only was the guy not doing any work, I mean, literally did nothing for 6 months, but he was actually stealing from the individual who appointed him. The problem was, under the law in the country in which he was working, or more correctly, not working, he was considered an employee. And so in order to get rid of him, the man who appointed him had to pay him a huge severance pay, because in a number of countries, it's not like the United States. In the US, we have what's called at-will employment, where if you no longer need somebody, you could terminate them. You don't have to pay them off. In a number of countries, that's not the case. An employee has to be paid commensurate with the amount of time that they've worked for you. So there are a number of serious considerations here. It's important to have counsel look over your documents. And then last but not least, a couple of thoughts on finding an agent or distributor. These are discussed at length in your text, so I won't belabor those points.